She was the kind of woman who couldn't go a day without hearing your voice. Her laugh used to echo through your phone. Her texts were long, playful, and full of spark. But slowly, like candlelight in the wind, it faded. No fight, no explanation. Just distance. You watched it happen. The replies got shorter. The tone is colder, the timing delayed. At first, you told yourself not to overthink. Maybe she was just busy, that maybe life got in the way. But your gut knew better. So you sat. With the discomfort, you let it twist in your chest, but you didn't react. You didn't double text. You didn't ask her why. You didn't try to make her feel what she once felt. You let go, not out of spite. Not to hurt her. But because your peace was louder than her absence, and something strange happened. She noticed, not all at once. But gradually her attention shifted again. You felt it. She started viewing your stories, dropping subtle hints, like here, a random message there, not enough to call it a comeback. But enough to know she was wondering, because she thought you'd chase. She thought you'd collapse. Under the weight of her silence, but when you didn't, it disrupted everything she expected in your letting go. She found something she couldn't explain, and slowly, she came closer. This wasn't a tactic. It was a transformation. It changed everything. You didn't need her to say it. You could see it in the way her eyes didn't linger anymore. She was there, but not present. A body beside you, but her soul had already stepped back. It began in the smallest ways. She stopped asking how your day was, laughed a little less, answered a little later. And when she did reply, it was just empty. You noticed it, and it stung. But instead of reacting, you breathed. Instead of interrogating, you observed. You didn't become bitter. You became still, because part of you already knew she was looking to see if you'd lose yourself, and you refused. You remembered who you were before she came. Before her presence filled your days with meaning. You were solid then, quietly powerful. And now, she was watching to see if that man was still there beneath the surface. The irony. Her drifting wasn't rejection, it was uncertainty. She didn't want to leave. She just wanted to feel something real again. But she didn't know how to ask for it, so she waited to see if you'd chase, if you'd beg, if you'd fall apart, just to hold her together. But you didn't. You let her drift, without pulling, without pleading, without panic, and in doing so, you became something most men never learned to be, a calm center in the middle of her storm. You didn't match her confusion, you matched her clarity, and while her eyes drifted, her heart slowly started remembering. The man who didn't flinch when she faltered. The man who stayed rooted when everything else was shaking. The man who didn't need her to stay strong. It wasn't random. Her silence had a rhythm, a pattern. Not out of hate, but to see if you would follow. Not physically, emotionally, she wanted. To know what she meant to you, but not through your words. Through your reaction to her absence. This was a test. One most men fail without even knowing they were being tested. She stopped initiating first. She'll let your messages sit unread a little longer. She gave less. To see what you'd do with less. And you noticed? Every cold reply. Every missing heart emoji. Every conversation that used to flow and now felt forced. The ache was real. You could feel it in your chest. Tight, heavy, confusing. But you didn't let it rule you, because deep down, you sensed something. This wasn't about you doing more. It was about seeing if you'd still be you. When she tried to pull your center out from under you, and so you passed a test she never admitted she was giving, not by leaning in, but by leaning back. You didn't text back faster. You didn't ask her what was wrong. You didn't try to solve the distance. Instead, you let the gap speak, let the silence echo. Let your energy stay grounded, moved, wavering, because you understood something she didn't even understand about herself. She wasn't looking for words. She was looking for weight, for gravity, for a man who wouldn't abandon himself to keep her close. And when you stayed calm in her storm, she felt something rare. Not control, not power, but safety. You weren't reacting to her shift. You were standing through it. And somewhere inside, she felt it. The quiet pressure of a man who doesn't chase validation, because he's already met himself. And that, more than anything, started to pull her back. Even if she didn't realize it yet, she didn't withdraw because you failed her. She withdrew because she was scared of how deeply she felt you. And when a woman feels that much, it triggers something ancient inside her, a fear of losing control, a fear of not being enough, fear of being seen too clearly. You didn't just make her smile, you made her vulnerable. And that's when the mask began to slip. She pulled away not to escape you, but to protect herself from the possibility of being hurt by you, because your calm presence stirred something in her, not just attraction exposure. You made her feel seen, and for a woman who's used to holding the power, that's terrifying. Her coldness wasn't punishment, it was panic. So she did what many do when emotions get too real. She tested the fire by backing away from it. She questioned what she felt, hoping the confusion would quiet the intensity. But it didn't. Instead, your silence became a mirror. And in that mirror, she saw her own hesitation, her own fear, her own walls. You weren't pulling her back. Somehow, she kept thinking about you. Because when a man doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't explain, he gives her space to feel her own heart beating in the silence. You weren't loud or unforgettable, and every time she remembered your stillness, it challenged her fear, because you weren't trying to prove yourself. You had already proven something far more powerful that you wouldn't abandon, your self-worth just to keep her close. In a world full of men trying too hard to be seen, you stood out by not trying at all. You were present, not pressing. And that quiet, grounded energy, it haunted her most beautifully. Not because you vanished, but because she knew. You felt real. And real is rare. This is the part where everything breaks for most men, not because she walked away, but because they followed too fast. She pulled back and they panicked. Suddenly they're writing essays in her inbox. Did I do something wrong? Talk to me. Be honest with me, please. They flood her with energy she didn't ask for, thinking more effort will fix the emotional gap. But what they don't realize is that gap wasn't a mistake. It was a stage. And she was watching closely how you would handle it. When you start chasing her silence, you stop leading. You shift the dynamic. You hand her the frame, and now she's not drawn to you. She feels responsible for your emotional balance. And that pressure, it kills attraction. You're no longer the calm center. You've become the storm. Every over-explanation, every emotional spiral, every plea to be understood. It chips away at her memory of your strength. You go from mysterious to predict, from grounded to grasping. And worst of all, you teach her that your confidence was never real. It was just a mask worn when things were easy. But you didn't do that. You didn't beg for clarity. You didn't try to win her back. You didn't explain the value she already knew you had. You stood in the unknown, unshaken, because, a man who truly knows his worth doesn't feel the need to sell it. You understood something powerful. She wasn't pulling away because she wanted you to prove yourself. She was pulling away to see if you already had. And when you stayed centered, you did nothing except hold your posture. You passed a test most men don't even see coming, and now the frame was shifting back. Not because you demanded it, but because your silence spoke louder than any words ever could. She never wanted you to chase her. She just wanted to feel your strength, not in your hands, not in your words, but in your restraint. She hoped you'd notice the shift. She hoped you'd feel the coldness. She hoped you'd sense the wall. It was quietly building between you, but she didn't want you to climb over it. She wanted to see if you'd stand tall on your side and wait, unmoved, not waiting like a lost boy, waiting like a king who knows exactly who he is. With or without her, she didn't need reassurance. She needed reflection. When she pulled back, she was subconsciously hoping you'd hold your ground, to see if your presence was conditional, to see if your energy would collapse in her absence. And when it didn't, when you stayed still, composed, Holshay felt something rare. A man who wouldn't abandon his center. A man who could feel deeply without reacting weakly. A man who could give space without losing connection. This wasn't about games. It was about gravity. It's about showing her you're the kind of man who doesn't flinch in emotional weather. You didn't send paragraphs. You didn't ask what's wrong. You didn't try to fix her silence. Instead, you offered something more powerful than reassurance. You offered stability. Not with words, but with presence. You became the emotional mountain she didn't know she was looking for. It's that presence, that stillness, that quiet power. It started echoing in her mind, over and over, because in a world of noise, you became the silence that pulled her in. She secretly hoped you'd stand still. And when you did, she started walking back, not because you pushed, but because you stayed. Unapologetically, unshakably. unforgettably. She didn't expect you to disappear. Not fully. Not like that. You were always there before, ready with a reply, warm with attention, steady with care. But now, she looked, and you weren't where she left you. No goodnight text, no emoji reaction to her story, no quiet little check-ins. You were just gone, not in body, but in energy, and the silence hit harder than anything you could have said. She scrolled through your old messages, looking for a clue. She stared at your profile, wondering if she imagined what you two once had. She waited subtly for something. A sign that you were still invested, but you didn't show it. It's not even a little, because you understood now. Chasing destroys presence. Overexposure ruins mystery. And the man who knows his worth doesn't repeat himself, not even with attention. Your silence wasn't passive. It was precise, intentional, masculine. You didn't need to make noise to be heard. She felt more in your absence than she ever did in your words, and that feeling started to haunt her, because now she was the one checking timestamps. Now she was the one wondering what you were thinking. And now she was replaying moments, wishing she hadn't pulled back so soon. Your silence reversed the frame, and the world around you shifted with it. Even her friends noticed her mood, her glances, her sudden quiet. She didn't speak your name, but they could tell, because you weren't just another guy she dated. You were the presence she underestimated. And now, in your quiet withdrawal, she finally saw your value. She didn't say it out loud, but her energy changed. Because your silence didn't push her away. It pulled her in, without effort, without force, without even trying. You became the mystery she couldn't let go of. And all because you finally let go. By the time she truly felt it, you were already gone. Not bitter, not broken, just elevated. She came back in fragments. A random reaction to your story. It's a subtle comment under an old post. A hesitant hey at midnight that carried 1,000 unsaid words. But you didn't move. You didn't open the door the way you once did. You didn't bend the moment she knocked because something had changed. Not just between you and her, inside you. She thought letting go would make her feel free. But it only reminded her what real presence feels like when it's gone. She thought silence would pull you in, but it pulled her deeper than she expected. She started to realize the man she thought would wait forever had outgrown the space she left him in. And now, the power was gone. It's not because you took it, but because she gave it up the moment. She tested what shouldn't be tested. You didn't come back to prove anything. You didn't explain your growth. You didn't soften your edge for her comfort. You simply stood in your new self, taller, quieter, wiser, and she saw it all, in your eyes, in your stillness. In the calm silence between her message and your measured reply, no anger, no blame, just presence. She smiled at your calm, but it made her ache, because now she knew what she had overlooked, what she had pushed away, thinking it would stay. But the man who can let go, he doesn't return as the same version she left. He returns. Stronger or not at all. And you didn't just move on. You became. She may never admit it, but every part of her remembers. Your energy, your restraint, your rare silence that didn't seek approval. It became unforgettable, because now she realizes you were never the one chasing her. You were the one she was quietly hoping would never stop being himself, and that version of you. That man who chose dignity over desperation, he left an imprint. You're not just attractive, you're unforgettable. There's a man she forgets, then there's you. You didn't win her by proving anything. You didn't lose her by letting go. You simply chose yourself. Chose silence over noise, posure over confusion, depth over drama. And in a world of men constantly trying to impress, to explain, to hold on, you did the opposite. You released, and when you did, something powerful happened. You grew, you evolved, you returned to the center of your own gravity, because being unforgettable isn't about having the loudest voice. It's about being the calm in her chaos, the man she feels in the quiet moments when no one's watching. So this isn't about her anymore. It's about you, your dignity, your stillness, your quiet power. Be the man who doesn't flinch when she withdraws, who doesn't beg for closure, doesn't shrink for approval. Be the man who lets go when it's time, not out of fear, but out of knowing, because the one who can walk away with peace is the one she remembers forever. Not for the words he said, but for the silence that changed everything. And now, let the world feel your absence, and let it echo with presence.